Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. We're doing our end of the year episode. We're going to talk a little bit about this launch year when we put together 13 episodes. And tonight we have Daniel Gott back in the studio with us, one of our original cast members. And we've got Kris Ockenfels, per usual, as my co-host. And we're happy to have these guys here. And we're going to talk about some of the craziness or the thinking that went into launching this thing. And then some of our favorite moments from previous episodes, as well as some of our favorite sports stories, locally and on the professional level in the previous year, and then some predictions possibly for what might happen in 2025. Guys, what were we thinking when we hatched this podcast? What did you guys think when I approached you with this idea?
Well, we start with what were you thinking, Jeff, when you started this? But I am just really excited to be a part of it. 14 episodes, didn't see that coming back at the beginning. I've enjoyed every single one, learning the process. You've been a director worthy of an Academy Award for all that you've done to set this up and produce it and direct it. And I'm just along for the ride, and it's been a great time.
Well, I was thinking, what a great idea. And one thing that I think anytime I would ever see any one of you, topic that always would come up is sports, whether it's the local or national level. And so it just made sense. You know, I'm thankful to be a part of a few of these episodes. And I'm thankful for you to have me back, even though really the worst episodes are the one that I'm on. So really bold move to bring me back. So thanks for doing that.
Hey, let's add into that it is fun. It is a lot of fun to get to do this and talk sports, which we all love, we have a passion for, and to bring in stories that maybe we know, but not a lot of people out there know. And it's amazing. You've said it a couple times, Jeff, about Trenton, Missouri, something about the people that come through this place and the stories that they have. You would think we were in a big city with all the things that the undercurrents that are happening in sports that run through this town. And there's still more to be uncovered. So looking forward to that too.
When we started this, we didn't know how long it would last. Would anybody listen to it? And I beg to differ with Daniel. Some of my favorite episodes are not the most popular episodes, but they crackle with some good energy and we have fun. My biggest thing, the enjoyment I get out of it the most, is when we have interviewed people, whether it's remotely or in that chair, how they all thank us for the opportunity to tell their story. And people are excited to tell those stories and bring them back from the past or things that they're trying to accomplish right now. It's just a good feeling that, because there's imposter syndrome when you start one of these things. You think, who's going to listen to me and who wants to book on a podcast that doesn't have any episodes or any listeners? And then you find out that people are really generous with their time. They have interesting stories and they like telling them.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't compare yourself to some of the big podcasts, which I find myself doing sometimes, looking out there at the Kelsey Brothers or the Joe Rogan podcasts or the ones that have millions and millions of listeners every week, like, oh gosh, we just will never get there. Well, that's not our purpose. That's not what we're doing it for. And if you kind of get that perspective right, that we're doing it for the local listen and trying to branch out and just bring things to people that want to listen, then you can always, take solace in that you're doing something fun and that people are enjoying it.
Now, you'll appreciate this. This has been a retail sales job, and it really shouldn't be. It's supposed to be social media and all that kind of stuff. But literally half the people that have listened to our podcast have never listened to a podcast in their life and don't have a clue how to get to it. This has been kind of an eye-opening thing for some of those folks, that this is a whole area of interests, sports and otherwise, that is a great time waster. It's a great thing to listen to when you're traveling down the road. And I think we've introduced that to a lot of people that weren't experiencing that previously.
Yeah, I agree. I've had to show multiple people, here's how you do it. Here's how you get on whatever app or whatever your choice to listen to, whether it's Apple or Spotify. There's a demographic out there that is willing to listen. And if we have to help them out, then we will.
To me, it's really the big difference in even what Kris is talking about. Those big shows, they're in it for, that's a job and it's a money-making situation. And they do a great job. They're entertaining to listen to. What's great about this show is it is very local. And there's not a huge audience out there that we're even in search of. It's giving this content to people who are going to be connected to it. And when you've literally interviewed people from Alan Berry to Jeremy Esri to Wes Croy, Rich Griffith was in this studio talking on a podcast. And, that is amazing in itself when you can have those types of guests, and people enjoy listening to that because people have heard of the 1966 class and what they did on the football field, but to actually sit and hear stories from people who were directly involved, I mean, that's wonderful and very enjoyable. So it's been great for me to be on both sides of this as a few-time contributor, but I've listened to every episode and some of them twice. So you guys done a great job.
I want to thank Tyler Busick real early on, gave me some sense about podcast and the sound quality and things that he thought were critical for us to know about. And that was very helpful, and I appreciate that. And Rick Cole up at the college did a couple things. First of all, he encouraged me. He liked the ideas that we had, the story ideas. He thought those would be really cool to bring to light. But then he said, keep the time down. 30, 35 minutes is kind of max. And then we went to 40 minutes, blew right on through those stop signs to 50. Part of that's just because we're doing profile work. It's a story and it needs to be told. And part of it is lack of discipline on the host part. But anyway, Rick, I took your advice seriously, and we still aspire to that, although we have not accomplished that.
To throw a pop culture reference out there, sometimes you just got to Thelma and Louise it. Just got to hold hands and press on the gas and go. And sometimes we do that on this podcast, and it usually works out okay.
But sometimes it is driving off a cliff.
Well, sometimes it is.
But very rare.
All right. Bad reference, sorry.
We have an edit button for that driving off a cliff thing.
Right, yeah, yes, absolutely.
So we've done a lot of interviews with local folks like Mike Arbuckle, who's made his name in Major League Baseball and 46 years as a scout and administrator in scouting and development. We've talked with local coaches like Wes Croy, Max Mothersbaugh, Jeremy Esri, who are making their careers or have made their careers and reputations in various sports, football, softball, basketball. And we've talked about people that impact sports through officiating, refereeing, like Jeremy Barnes, the young ref on TikTok, basketball, Alan Berry, longtime high school basketball official, and Nate Gammett, his son-in-law, who's working his way up through D1 college basketball officiating. Then we have these travel stories, and this guy across the desk from me travels a lot, and his wife is a great sport, obviously, and goes on these excursions. And it's fun to hear about what they ate, who they bumped into, what the architecture was of the stadiums they were in, and just where they went.
Yeah, there's so much out there. And I always told my kids when I was in the high school classroom that you'll learn more just by driving around this country than you ever will in a classroom, because there's so much to see, so much to experience. And so I've always just done that, taken my kids on road trips. One of the greatest things I came across was Alan Cunningham, who I ran into in Detroit, who made my road trips seem minor league in comparison, because he had been to over 120 parks, all the affiliates and all of the major league stadiums, and seen them all. So just when you think you are out there, someone's got you beat and traveling around looking at parks. So another great story that you can see. Just go to a stadium, go to a park, go to a game, and then you'll be able to tell those stories and relive them in the future.
The third part of what we wanted to do is just talk about how this all ties back to small towns, how it's relevant for us. We're not all just watching CBS or Fox to watch the Chiefs on Sundays together as a communal event. We all do that, but we show up. I coached basketball this winter, and ever since my games ended on Tuesday, I've been in a couple different gyms already, watching my daughter coach basketball, watching kids that I used to coach live out their dream playing high school basketball. So it's just part of our DNA, and we're going to be there, and we see each other in those settings. It's important to communities. This was our launch year. We had 13 episodes. Asking me to choose my favorite, hard to pick between them. I like them all. Kris will go, did you like this one? I go, I like them all when I'm done with them. I mean, while I'm working on them, not always, but once I've launched them and published them, I'm happy with them. So, Kris, you get to go first on this. What do you want me to queue up for you?
Well, one of my favorite episodes this year was the officials episode with the young ref and Alan Berry. Enjoyed that a lot, partly because I love basketball and partly because I was an official and a coach, and I know the things that those guys and gals go through every night when they go out on the floor to officiate or to coach. And then just hearing some of the stories about officiating, which clip that I'd love for you to replay is not only the travels, but the old gyms that you come across and what can happen in those gyms. Alan Berry had a couple good stories about some old gyms in this area, and that is one of my favorite clips of the young season.
We've been in some weird gyms with some weird, give me an example, some situation you found yourself in that was really surreal.
When you mentioned that, the first thing come to my mind, and all the Galt, Newtown, Mercer, Princeton, everybody in this small north central Missouri is going to love this story. I'm not going to say it was a bad experience, but the worst court I ever played on was in Ravenna. You guys ever been to Ravenna's gym? Ravenna's gym, if you didn't start the game, you was on the bench, you was on the court. You was sitting in a chair on the court. The out of bounds was behind us. The backboard it was against the top of the ceiling, and the rim was only about 9 foot 6 inches off the floor. You couldn't hardly shoot a free throw. If you had a 3-point line on it, which we didn't have when I played, but if you did have a 3-point line, it would almost hit the half court line. So the top of the free throw circle would have been a half court. You didn't get tired. You didn't get wore out running that game. And if you've ever been in Chula's gym, it's a lot like Chula's, only Chula's has a taller roof in it. There was the low ceiling. You couldn't shoot a free throw, no half court shots. The ball would have had gone down to go up into the goal. I enjoyed playing there. It was unique. I didn't enjoy it at the time as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, but as I got into refereeing and got into more sports, it was unique.
Well, I mean, part of the sports experience is you go with your brothers and you get on a bus and you go somewhere you've never been before and you roll out the balls and you do whatever and crazy things happen and you remember it for 50 years.
Well, I like my brothers, but I had Linda sitting beside me most of the time.
I've got a story about Chula. When I first moved here, my wife taught at Chula, and she said, "Hey, you know basketball, and they're looking for a scorekeeper, someone that can do the book. And can you come help us out and do the book?" I said, "Sure." So, I went to a bigger school, and most of the gyms I've been in and played in and coached in were bigger, right? First time you walk into Chula, and I was like, what is going on? I walked over to where I was going to sit to keep score, and my wife was going to do the clock, and I was going to keep the book. And I said, "Well, we got to get a different table." And she said, "Why?" I said, "This table is on the court." I said, "The scorer's table." It was like a folding table, and it was protruding probably 4 feet out onto the court. And I said, "How are the players going to avoid this table?" She said, "We'd use this table all the time. They'll avoid the table. They won't run into it." And I said, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can sit here and watch these kids run into the table that's protruding out onto the court." So I know how funny that is with Chula.
That was a great story and really appreciated Alan's perspective about being in all these little gyms in North Missouri.
And they all have their own bits of character that make them great, because if they were all just cookie cutter, it wouldn't really matter. All those older gyms usually have some quirk or something about them that people remember, which leads to the stories, which leads to the history of those old gyms getting passed down. So good stuff.
Okay, Daniel, what do you recall from a previous episode?
Of course, I agree. They're all good, and it was really hard for me to narrow it down. But I go back to the Wes Croy episode. I did a little coaching, but I never considered myself a coach. I'm a teacher, administrator, but I did a little bit of coaching, and I love listening to coaches talk about their experiences, about their teams. And one of the things that stood out to me, one of the many things that stood out to me during Wes's interview, was when you asked him, Jeff, about any player that basically went above their expectations and kind of that unsung hero. And he talked about one of his kids from Maysville. He talked about 2 kids from Trenton. Coaches rely on your stars, and they get that credit, and it's rightfully so. DeAndre Van Devender deserves all the credit, and he's always going to be that first person you think of. But he starts talking about, Scotty Stevens and some of those others who, as a coach, I'm sure those are the ones that were not getting as far as they were without Scotty Stevens that year or without Ethan Bennell the following year. And I just thought those stories are great to hear.
Let's cue that one up. Here we have Wes Croy talking about some of his favorite players that maybe weren't the stars of his team at that moment, but demonstrated all the leadership qualities and teammate qualities that he admires. Talk about a player or somebody that got the most out of their talent, somebody that just did everything the way you were impressed the whole time.
Okay, can I talk about 3? Because 3 just popped into my head.
Okay.
When I was at Maysville, I had a kid named Jerry McPhee, and Jerry was 5'0", 140 nothing, and he was quick but not fast. And he ran for 1,800 yards on a state quarterfinal team with a school that hadn't had any success for a long time. Now, there was nothing special physically about Jerry McPhee. Nothing special physically about Jerry McPhee. But he had as much desire to be great as any person I've ever coached, as much heart as any kid I've ever coached. So that's the first kid that just pops into my head, like, get the most out of your talent. The second one is, and we all remember the 07 team, and everybody remembers DeAndre Van Devener, and one of the most talented kids I've ever coached, a good worker, a good kid, a great player. There was nothing wrong with Andy Van Devener's work ethic. He earned everything that he was rewarded. I mean, he had a great work ethic. But people forget the kid that was next to him in the backfield. Scott Stevens was another kid that wasn't blessed with great size. He wasn't blessed with great speed. He wasn't slow by any means. He was quick, a lot like Jerry, but he just had this desire to be great, and he was a great teammate. Scott would do whatever we asked him to do, and there were nights where Andy would carry the ball 30 times, Scott would carry it 15, but you're going to get everything you got out of those 15 carries. He was going to give you every bit of effort that he could muster in his body. So there's another kid that I always look at, and I'm so proud of him because he had a good career as a coach at Brookfield. He's now the athletic director at Brookfield, and he's done so many great things. Went and played at Truman State, walked on and played. He's done so many great things in his career, and he's got a lot of career left. I hope he's not done coaching because I think he's a great coach. I think if the money thing would ever work out, it would be great for him to get back into coaching because he's such a good person. And then the third person I want to talk about, and this kid's really special to me for a different reason, Ethan Bunnell. Now, when we had that really good team in 07, Ethan started the season as our quarterback. He played the first 3 games as our starting quarterback. We just felt like we needed to make a change. He was a junior. I didn't feel he was explosive enough to play quarterback. I was probably wrong, but we made a quarterback change there. And for the rest of the year, Ethan didn't play all that much. He held on extra points and played special teams and played a little bit of defense, but his role really got cut. And he could have had a lot of animosity and well, I'm not going to play for that guy or I don't really care if I play next year. He came out as a senior, and I didn't start him the first 2 games as a senior. I was like, we're going to go with a younger kid, try to get some experience, so we're going to be, solid at quarterback for the next couple of years. And we started out, I think, 0-2, and I go up to Ethan, I say, hey, I'm going to move you back to quarterback. He didn't say, well, why are you moving me now, or, about time, or why did you ever bench me in the first place? And he went on to have one of the best years of any kid I can ever remember playing for me. And again, there was nothing special about Ethan. He couldn't run out of town in 3 days with a wind blowing behind him, but he was just a kid that hated to lose. He was driven. He was a great teammate. He was a great leader. He had a great season, led us to we upset an undefeated Lawson team at Lawson in the first round of the playoffs that year. And he was probably the biggest reason why, surrounded by great teammates. But he was the leader of that team. Just for him to not give up and not throw in the towel and not be, angry or have animosity, for him to come back and say, okay, hey, yeah, I'm your quarterback now. And he went out and had just a monster year. And I'm so proud of him for that. And he's another kid that's in education. He's the athletic director at Grundy R5. To me, it's not a coincidence that a lot of these kids that just drain their ability, like they use every bit of talent that they've got in their body, go on to become coaches and teachers and educators because it's kind of just built into them.
Okay, that was a good one from Wes. Got a kick out of that. I am going to pick the one from Jeremy Esri's episode where he talked about going with his dad, Scott, who was a referee for 32 years. And Jeremy thought he was 6 or 7 years old. And he described kind of the child rearing techniques that I was accustomed to with the dad as a principal, getting dragged to a lot of things and stuck over in a corner of a bleacher and told to behave and not embarrass myself, embarrass my dad. So here's Jeremy talking about his first exposure and the love of the game and all the things that he got out of hanging out with his dad.
Dad was a high school basketball official around here for 32 years. And so, my first memories of basketball and stuff are spending quality time with him and getting to go to games, because he would take me, probably relieve my mom of me being a nuisance at the house. So he would take me with him. Man, I 5, 6, 7 years old, and I can remember, him going to the games, and he would point and he'd tell me where to sit in the bleachers, and it'd be all by myself. And then, people would yell at him and stuff, and I'd try to yell back, "That was a good call." But probably my favorite 2 things about going with him, and looking back, my favorite thing was bonding with him and getting to ride with him and stuff. My favorite things at the time were hospitality rooms. They were really cool. They're really good, and I could tell you.
Still good.
Oh yeah, they still are, and I could tell you all the good ones around. And then I think what really got me hooked basketball wise, and I would go with my dad to these games, watch him officiate and stuff. But the thing I was most concerned about was there going to be a loose basketball after the game. And when he was in the locker room and when he was showering and finishing up, was I going to be able to play basketball for 5 minutes out on the court? And if there wasn't a basketball, I was getting a bag of popcorn and balling it up, and I was shooting all that. So I remember, playing the 5 minutes after the basketball game, and that was my life, just getting to do that.
I could just see that. Just that picture of him running around, probably under the bleachers. There were a lot of old-fashioned bleachers back in those days. You drop your popcorn down below, and then kids would always be running underneath. Administrators trying to shoo them out of there. All that kind of stuff. You guys are familiar with all of that.
Yeah, when I used to do scouting reports when I was coaching, I sometimes would put a CK next to certain names, and that CK stood for coach's kid, because coach's kids and referees' kids, there's something about having the experience of growing up as a coach's kid. Everything that you soak in, you may not be the tallest, the fastest, the strongest, but when you soak up those experiences and you soak up that knowledge and you're just around the game, whether it's basketball or football, that translates later in life when you are a player or a coach yourself. So same kind of thing with the connection that Jeremy had with his dad.
Hey, we're going to make a call here to one Brian Upton, who was on the panel in our 4th episode. I think he's a fan of the show. I'm not sure if he's kept up with that fandom. So let's see if.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Crowley with Show Me Sports Legacies up here in Trenton. How are you this evening?
Well, hey, Jeff. I'm doing okay. What prompts you to give me a buzz?
We wanted to have you jump in with us on our end of year sports episode.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, what can I do to help you?
Would you like to share some knowledge with us about something that you enjoyed, maybe your favorite episode of the Show Me Sports Legacies Season 1?
Well, I think that's pretty common knowledge. The episode 4, the one I got to participate in.
What was it about that episode that you thought made it so special?
Well, I think the part that I enjoyed the most was just getting in the studio with you and Ock and kicking around a few things, talking about some of the stuff that's going on in the current sports world, particularly baseball in that episode.
Good. You guys got anything to throw at this guy?
Hey, Coach Upton, give me your thoughts on the Royals, since this is what I ask you every time I see you. Give me your thoughts on the Royals and the offseason moves. Go.
Hey, Ock, it's good to talk to you. Well, I'm super excited about our new infielder or possibly outfielder, depending on where he ends up playing. I think Singer trade for India was right on the money. I think we got something that we need, and we got to trade off something that we had, I don't want to say in excess of. We have some really good starting pitching, and he's going to make us a little bit thinner, but I think there's some guys that could fill that role. And to be honest with you, I think we traded Brady at kind of his high point, I think.
Hey, Coach Upton, Daniel Gott here. I just want to update you and let you know that we do have a little delay in the Brian Upton statue construction, but it is coming. I don't have a concrete date yet, but just know that it's in the works and will be very similar to the Rocky Balboa statue that can be found in Philadelphia. But we are close, is what I can tell you. We're close.
So is that going to be made out of concrete or a concrete date? I wasn't sure about what you meant.
Well, so I don't know. We are having to cut some cost. So I don't want to give any sort of concrete answer to that.
Excellent.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Well, Coach, we're going to call you back in a few minutes if you don't mind. So make sure you have a cold beverage and a comfortable chair, but we're going to have you jump in. And so that you think about this, we're going to have you jump in with your favorite day in the sports calendar year. And we're going to call you back in just a few minutes when we roll up on that category in the next 15 minutes or so. If I can rein these guys in or quit talking myself and give you a buzz back.
Sounds good. Well, Mr. Gott and Ock, it was really, really good to talk to you guys.
Okay.
You too, Coach.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, a little icy toward me there. I don't really know what's going on there, but
Jeff, did you terminate his contract early or
send him the standard SAG contract? but apparently that wasn't enough for him. I don't know what might be going on there.
I hope it's not always that chilly when you call Coach Upton.
Yeah.
You seemed quite grumpy when you answered the phone there.
I don't know what's happening. Let's just move on. We'll come back to that. Pro Sports Story of the Year. In the year 2024, Daniel, I'm going to let you go first on this one.
Okay, obviously there's always a lot, but for me, it goes back to February and the Chiefs winning their second Super Bowl in a row. And I know some people say, well, how's that a big story? Because that's old news at this point. They won 2 in a row. Well, because I never even thought in my lifetime I was going to see them win 1. And now I've seen 3 and back to back, and now an opportunity to make history and win 3 in a row. So for me, that's still kind of the sports highlight of the year for me, the big sports moment. And the fact that it was against the 49ers again, which is especially then, was a very loaded, talented team. The fact that happened in overtime, the defense makes a stop. Chris Jones comes through and gets in Purdy's face, and that ball falls into the end zone, and they have to kick a field goal, and you knew right then. It's like you knew what was going to happen. And Patrick Mahomes, who is still the best player in the world, came down and won the Super Bowl to Mecole Hardman.
Mecole Hardman. Jets legend.
And this is why I'm telling you, this is why he's the best player in the world, because that ball went to Mecole Hardman to win the Super Bowl. And someday that'll be a trivia question, and everybody's going to know who threw it, but they're going to assume it was to a big name, and it just didn't matter. And, all the naysayers that are right now, just remember, we've been here before, and we're right on the precipice of number 3.
That's amazing.
Mecole Hardman, also star of the Hallmark Chiefs movie, by the way. So Mecole opened a lot of doors for him.
The acting chops were unbelievable.
Oh, man. Yeah, unreal.
Along with Trey Smith and Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah. So that was my second choice this year for Story of the Year, was the Hallmark Chiefs movie. But
they found that hat, by the way.
Yeah. I think so.
Oh, listen, I'll take the hat at this point. Yeah, let's bring the hat.
Okay, so if we've all seen it, we're not allowed to make fun of it too much, right? Okay. So kudos to the Hallmark, but that's not my favorite story of the year. I'm going with, of course, Royals. Everybody that's listened knows I'm a big Royals fan. And my story of the year was the year of Bobby. And I'm just going to give you a laundry list of what happened with Bobby Witt Jr. this year for the Royals. He started off the year with a near $300 million contract extension, which is pretty uncharacteristic of the Royals to shell out big money to a player of that huge of a contract. I think it was like 10 or 11 years, $288 million, in that range. And so we knew right away, or the front office did, and all the fans, that we have got something special. So that turns into a great start for the Royals. By midway through the year, Bobby Witt Jr. is leading the league in hitting, first or second in stolen bases. He becomes an all-star. He gets national attention by the home run derby. And then that kind of momentum keeps going, and the Royals make the playoffs. They win their first-round matchup with Baltimore. Bobby Witt Jr. wins the batting title. They do lose to the Yankees, who eventually go on to the World Series. But the awards start coming in post-season for Bobby Witt Jr. He gets the Silver Slugger, which is the best hitter at his position. He wins the Gold Glove for the best fielder at his position. He gets second in the MVP balloting behind a ridiculous year by Aaron Judge, or he would have won the MVP. And he gets married in 2024. So kudos. I hope we have lots of years that we talk about Bobby Witt, but I'm not sure you can top the year that he had. And my favorite stat of the year was that only one other shortstop in the history of the American League has won the batting title, won Silver Slugger, and won a Gold Glove, and that was Alex Rodriguez, and he did that over a span of his career, and Bobby Witt Jr. did that all in 1 year, his second year in the league.
I am so happy when I go to Dallas. I don't have to explain Kansas City sports to anybody in the Dallas area, because Bobby Witt Jr. and Patrick Mahomes are good Texas boys that we were smart enough to sign. And so it's pretty easy for me to be a Chiefs fan and a Royals fan in Texas. They tolerate that pretty well because the quality of those two individuals It's amazing.
And I've got one more thing to add, because coming off of Daniel's story about Patrick Mahomes being the best player in football, which he is something I heard on another podcast. Is there a better duo with two major sports in a city right now than the Bobby Witt Mahomes duo? Think about that. That's your homework, listeners out there. In any other city, you can take two major sports. So take LA, where you might have Ohtani and LeBron James. Is any duo out there better right now than Patrick Mahomes and Bobby Witt Jr.?
No.
We know the answer to that.
No, the answer is no.
No.
answer is no.
It's a resounding no.
They also have Whataburger.
That is what. And Whataburger
Yeah.
at his wedding.
At his wedding,
Yeah.
Whataburger. That's right.
That's good stuff. Do you still have the mullet at the wedding?
It was there.
It's clean cut, but it's there. Absolutely.
Good.
Yep.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, we're going to bring another guest in here just momentarily. Okay, we're joined by my daughter, Kendall Crowley, who has popped up in a few episodes, and she is a big Chiefs fan. Let's start with that balmy night that you watched the Miami Dolphins suffer at Arrowhead Stadium.
Last minute, me and my college friend Hayden decided to make our way to Kansas City because the tickets were super cheap. And it was the first playoff game against Miami, and it was negative something degrees, but the wind chill was like negative 27. I went shopping for some warm clothes really quick. We made
no idea what warm clothes actually were. She went to Walmart, and I was literally talking her through the aisles, what she might be looking for.
Yeah. I was looking up on Facebook, like, okay, what do I need to bring for this game? Because I have no idea what I'm getting myself into.
Layers.
Yeah, layers and layers. So I had about 5 layers on. We waited to put on the layers until we got into the parking lot. We got out and we were all dressed, and we could barely really walk. We were kind of like wobbling along into the stadium. Yeah. And we made our way to our seats, and they were like a couple rows back because they were super cheap.
End zone tickets.
Yeah, end zone tickets. We got to see Pacheco's touchdown, and my eyelashes were completely frozen. I went to the bathroom multiple times to put new hand warmers and feet warmers into my shoes and gloves, but it was a great experience and one for the books.
And I am just glad that you got home from the Dolphins-Chiefs game with all of your fingers and toes, because not everybody got home from that game with all their fingers and toes. So it's a good thing that you went shopping and dressed appropriately, so you got to keep all your fingers and toes.
Yeah, it just got to the point where my body was like numb. So then I was like, okay, let's go. Like the energy was still there the whole entire game, no matter how cold people were.
Except if you were to it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, or anyone. I mean, the Dolphins did not handle it well.
I mean, they're from Florida.
They didn't handle it well.
Okay, well, thank you for jumping in here, and thanks for talking about your favorite pro sports moment in 2024. We're blessed with pro sports at the highest levels. There were some local sports going on this year that were just as compelling. Okay, so I'm going to say the local sports story of the year was the NCMC men's basketball program, which went to their 3rd national tournament in 4 years in spring, won a couple games, competed at the highest levels, and then started this season off, and they still haven't lost a game. They are ranked number 1 in the nation in Division II NJCAA rankings in Trenton, Missouri, the number 1 basketball team in our class. And it's quite a story, and I don't think it's about to end, really, but 2024 bookend, going to the national tournament, and then going into Christmas break as the number 1 team in the nation in your classification. Kudos to Jeremy Essery and all the people involved in that program.
And I sometimes wonder when people around the country see those rankings and see that little North Central Missouri is ranked in both women's and men's in the top 10, a lot of times top 20. Like, what's going on there in that little town that they are perennially ranked in the top 10 and top 20, which is just a testament to what they're doing up there at the Ketchum Center and at NCMC.
They've got it rolling. Chris, local sports story of the year.
Okay, I'm going local, and I'm going Trenton High School, which had a lot of great moments in the year, a lot of great teams, a lot of great accomplishments. But I'm going with one of the greatest kids I've ever even had the opportunity to be around over the last 4 years, a student athlete that does everything the right way, from her kindness to her work ethic to everything that she tries to embody as an athlete, and that is Astrid Soriano. She is a tennis player in the fall for Trenton High School, and she got to go to state for the 3rd time this fall, this time as a singles player. She has been twice as a doubles player. So she is a 3-timer going to state, which is a huge accomplishment, which also means she's a 3-time district champ. Kudos to her for just getting there, because it is so tough to get there in individual sports like tennis, golf, wrestling, to get to that mecca of the state tournament. And she got to do it 3 times out of her 4 years. Not only did she do it in doubles, then she turned around and did it this year in singles. So that's my sports story. Go Astrid.
Go Astrid.
Yeah, kudos to Astrid. I mean, just, being around her now the last 4 years that she's been in our district, you're hard pressed to find a better kid. So good for her. I'm going to go with a date, Sunday, December 8th of 2024. One of the best things that could happen in the state locally happened. That is when the Mizzou Tigers took down the then number 1 Kansas Beakers.
The Dirty Birds.
The Dirty Birds. And no matter, listen, it's a joyous day when Kansas loses at anything, but when Mizzou is who's taking them down.
It's been a while.
It's a great feeling, and it's a great thing. And no matter what happens with Mizzou's season at this point, to me, it's a success. The Gate statue will go right up really close to the Brian Upton statue after that win. Bates had 29 points in that game to lead, and it is just a great performance. And yeah, so for me, that's the local sports story of the year, no matter what else happens. Down goes Kansas.
There's a sidebar to that, and that is a lot of these kids in the transfer portal coming back home. We talk about people going to greener pastures, but a lot of those players on Missouri's team went somewhere else.
Yeah.
Pasture wasn't greener, coming back home, beating KU.
Yeah, and kudos to the schools for finally getting that game
absolutely
back on the schedule, because it was so important to so many people early on in the Big 8 days, and such a great rivalry, like one of the best in the country.
Playing them in football again next year as well. So,
and you would think that's a no-brainer, right? Those 2 schools have to play, but then the conference realignment happened, and then feelings were hurt, and you're not in my conference, and you ran away from our conference, and okay, we're just not going to play you anymore. That game has to be played every year.
We don't need to see Kansas playing the Saskatchewan Northmen, the new member of the Big 12. We need to see Kansas playing Mizzou, because it makes sense.
We're going to move to the next category. What's your favorite sports day on the yearly calendar? I mean, when you look ahead or you anticipate.
Man, did I struggle, because there's so many good ones. And I'm going to pick one that is not one of the major sports. If I had to list my sports, I would say I'm a baseball fan first, and I love football, basketball, even soccer. But I'm going away from that because there's just something about this day that gets to me, and it is Masters Sunday. The back nine of Masters Sunday is one of the greatest sports moments of the year, and it means more than just the Masters. It means springtime is coming. It's going to be summer soon. Something about that turn and those holes and Amen Corner and the 18th at the Masters and those guys walking up and the green jacket waiting in the cabin, all of the lore, all of the sounds, the announcers, they just package that. I've never got to go. That's also on my bucket list. That's it for me. That's my top. I've got a couple I could list for you, but I'm going with number one for me, and that's Masters Sunday.
I'm just going to throw in a dad-daughter thing here. In 2002, when Kendall was born, it was on Masters Saturday, and we watched Tiger Woods win the Masters in the hospital room with the new baby. It was a pretty good day.
And you didn't name her Eagle or Albatross or Birdie or anything, so
we just said Amen.
Hey,
Amen
there you go.
Nice.
Yeah,
you could have called her. I mean, Tiger probably would have made the most sense.
Daniel, can we call Brian Upton again? I don't know that I think we caught him off guard, perhaps. You want to say hi to him?
I am always a fan of calling Brian Upton.
I'm sure he's got a favorite sports day.
Hello?
Hey, Coach Upton. Daniel Gott here.
Hey, Mr. Gott.
How we doing?
We're doing wonderful. How you doing?
Good. We're still here talking about some Show Me Sports Legacies, and right now we are visiting about your favorite sports day of the year, what it is that you look forward to the most.
All righty. Well, have you went around the panel any? Has anybody got?
So far, we've talked about the Masters. Weekend at the
That's a good
Masters.
one. Okay, well, there's a lot of days to pick from. There's nothing better than being at the ballpark opening day or kick off the NFL season or March Madness, all that stuff. And I was kind of thinking through, and there's two things that really stuck out in my head, and one of them kind of takes me back to some of my younger days. New Year's Day college football used to be really special. I mean, you waited for the Rose Bowl in the evening, but you had the Orange Bowl, the Peach Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl. They're always big name teams. And I still look forward to that now. It's a little bit different with the college football playoffs. Back in the day when you didn't know who was number one was going to be until after New Year's Day was done, and the bowls were played. And I still look forward to that a lot. But the best day of the year is any day that KU basketball loses. So,
tough crowd tonight for Jayhawk fans here on the podcast.
Yeah, well, that just kind of trumps everything, and I don't necessarily feel that way about Kansas football anymore, but boy, I still have that feeling for Kansas basketball.
Sunday, December 8th, then is your best day of the year so far, because
so far it was wonderful.
What a blessed day.
That's right.
And when they get bounced from the NCAA tournament, we call that Christmas in March.
Yeah, by Bucknell.
Bucknell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all the B teams.
Yeah, it'll be someone throwing in Northern Iowa.
Yeah, that's right.
Ali Farouk Namesh. I will remember that name forever. No one else knows who Ali Farouk Namesh is right now, probably, but the people who really just like to see Kansas lose, and the people who live in Northern Iowa.
He was reigning 3 that day.
There's nothing more fun than having a good-natured but deeply felt rivalry with a KU fan and being able to give it to them when you get one over on them, because they're coming after you when they get one over on you.
Hey, you can still tell it's a big rivalry too, because as a kind of a neutral fan in this thing, when one beats the other, I like to jump on, especially Facebook or social media, because it's going to start raining anti-Kansas or anti-Mizzou posts when one of those teams lose, or especially when they play each other. I go, here they come. I'm gonna be entertained for the next 15 or 20 minutes.
Coach, we appreciate you jumping in with us tonight, and we're glad we caught you this second time. So, there isn't any bad feelings.
No.
We're
all good.
We're all good.
Hey, and on the bottom of that plaque on that statue is going to be, among the things listed about your accomplishments, is going to be first live call-in from the podcast, Brian Upton. So we're going to make sure that's etched on the plaque.
Yeah, well,
pretty heady stuff.
Again, with budget cuts, that's going to be dry erase marker. So really, we're going to be able to put whatever we want on there at any time. So
I'm not too worried about the timing of it. Just make sure you get all the funds necessary. Make sure that you get them secured and put away, so that even if it's got to be a process deal, it'll all be good.
It's my top priority, Coach.
All right, I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Calling.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, that was fun. Maybe a future podcast segment is the call-in. Loved it.
I enjoy that. Just a wild card in the whole thing.
Especially when you can surprise people.
Yeah.
Like they should not know it's coming.
And the call-in has kind of gone away since social media. Probably the 80s and 90s. That's was the thing on radio shows. Was, can we surprise somebody with the call-in?
People cannot be trusted to call in and hold the line on their behavior. So we can't do that anymore. Daniel, you are next on this one. Favorite sports day on the yearly calendar.
Okay, Jeff, I think this is the hardest assignment you've given me so far, because it's just really difficult being a sports lover, because there's so many things you get excited about. Game 7 of any baseball in the playoffs is so exciting, but it's hard to answer that with this question, because that's not really on a calendar. It's not something you can plan for. I almost feel like this is like a lame-o commercial answer, but for me, it's just true. And that's Super Bowl Sunday, because the whole day almost feels like a holiday. There's almost too much buildup even during the day. But once you get to that game, it is a Game 7, because you're playing once. This is it. I mean, so it's for everything. And man, there's nothing bigger than when your team is in it. I feel sick, like physically sick at kickoff when the Chiefs are playing in it, because every play is huge. The Super Bowl is just that for me. I sure am ready to see the team in red back there for the 30 in a row.
I had a bunch of them here, but I'm going to come out of left field with one that isn't such a big day, but what it represents to me is big, and that is pitchers and catchers report for spring training. Dude, that means
Love it.
Winter is about over.
Yeah.
And we are about to have 6 months of hopefully great baseball.
You bet.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our last thing, which is bold prediction, because we're about nothing if not bold predictions. I don't think we've ever done a bold prediction on this show ever, but in episode 14, we're coming with it. My first bold prediction, NCMC men go into the year ranked number 1. This may not seem like a bold prediction, but we're a long way from winning the national title, and I think this is the year they do it. I think the NCMC men's basketball team wins their first NJCAA national title. How's that sound?
That sounds great. I love it. I don't know if it's bold or just the reality that we're in, that they're in that conversation and have a chance. They play great basketball, have the experience because they've been to the national tournament a few times here recently, and I love it. I love the prediction.
Daniel.
I've been back and forth on this, but you know what? I'm going to go with it because I do think it's still my bold prediction because I do believe it. I think Bobby Witt Jr. is the MVP of baseball next year in the American League. I mean, I think that's going to happen. I think he can put together that type of season. He's that type of player. And I think that's what we're going to see. That's my bold prediction.
That's excellent.
Okay, so I'm going away from the Royals a little bit and going to get on this Chiefs bandwagon. And I've got a 2-part bold prediction for you here. I do think that the Chiefs are going to win their 3rd in a row, which sounds crazy to even say in a sentence after the last 50 years. But the biggest part of that, I think, or the boldest part of that is I think after the game, one Travis Kelce retires and rides off into the sunset as a 3-time repeat Super Bowl champion. There you go.
Wow. The confetti, the whole thing. Now, we can't let Andy and Patrick walk out that same door.
No, we've got them for a few more. And the way that Noah Gray is playing, I think there's a lot of factors into this. His brother has retired. His relationship with the biggest star on the planet. It may not happen because he could come back and play 2-3 more years. I just get that sense that
what a career he's had up to this point. I mean,
Amazing career. But don't you feel like right now, I mean, Noah Gray is tight end 1. I mean, he's playing like it too. And I think that's happening purposefully. I mean, and I think Travis Kelce's that type of teammate and player.
The best analogy maybe I've heard this year, heard it on one of either a podcast or on one of the shows, is Travis Kelce right now. The Chiefs are using him like he's that Ford Mustang in your garage that you've got the cover on, that you just let it sit there. And then when the right time comes on that perfect sunny day, which we call Super Bowl Sunday, that cover's coming off and that motor is humming and out comes the Mustang for the drive around town. And that is Travis Kelce. I still think he's got a huge game, a career-defining game in him, whether it's in the AFC title game or the Super Bowl and then right off into the sunset.
so is that the getaway car?
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay, what's our message to our fans? What would you tell them about the past year and what might come in season 2?
My message would be, I hope that you've enjoyed listening as much as I have. I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I've enjoyed even coming in and being a part of the few episodes that I've been a part of. I think sports in a world that's kind of crazy, and there's a lot of times a lot of negativity and social media and in our media and in our world, and there's a lot of sad and horrible things happening, unfortunately, but sports seems like something that can kind of bond us all, and that's why it's so fun to talk about. It's so fun to debate. It's so maddening and so euphoric, and all those things combined. And I think it just brings people together in a way, and the fact that we can get in this room and talk about it and listen to people whose whole life is wrapped around sports and listen to their stories, I just think it's great. My bold prediction for this show moving next year is that I think it's only going to get better. I think more people are going to get involved and want to be involved because hopefully they see and hear how much fun we've had doing it, and they can tell how much you and Kris put into it, and what a great job you guys do, and then every now and then pull in a bum off the street to just be a third voice, and I appreciate being part of it.
We're glad to have you. Glad to have you.
Okay, so Daniel knows this too. I'm a history guy. Started off my career teaching history, ended my career teaching history. And part of history was that history was passed down through generations through stories. Before there was writing, before there was technology and computers and recordings. You told your history of your community, of your tribe through stories. That's what we do here. And I love to be a part of that because I love the story aspect of this podcast, that we could sit around and talk legacy, which is in the title, genius on your part, Jeff. We can talk legacies and legacies that are passed down through stories. And I just want people out there to hear stories from Wes Croy, hear stories from Rich Griffith, hear stories from Max Mothersbaugh. I want to hear them, and I hope you guys out there want to hear them too, because that's how we keep them alive, and that's how we keep these legacies going, is by just sitting around and telling stories.
Excellent. I love the stories. It's everything to me. I want to thank everybody for listening. We have a distribution platform that we use that has 125,000 customers, and the other day they sent us a nice congratulatory email that said we were in the top 50%. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about that is these are quadrants, right? 50 to 25. And we could be 26th percentile for all I know. I mean, we're in that quadrant. Where in that quadrant?
Yeah.
You know this about testing.
Absolutely. And I don't know why I feel like this, but the number 28, it just hit me. And I think that's where we're at. I'm
Okay.
going to go ahead and say that.
Let's
I think you guys have put this
mark
show
it down.
Okay.
as the 28. You're 20, and that's, wow, huge. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on 28, gentlemen.
We'll take it.
In the next year, we're going to bring more stories. We're going to expand out our geographic map a little bit, but it all comes back to your hometown and how you feel about sports, how it's just important to us out here in North Missouri. And we're looking forward to that. We also plan to put out a little bit more content on a website that would allow us to maybe run a poll.
Right. And maybe that poll will fall in the footsteps of our great fantasy football group text and include white jerseys.
White jerseys. It's
So-
all about the Texas Whites.
So, if we can just live up to, and Jeff is looking at us like, what are they talking about? If we can just live up to the Texas all white jerseys, we are going places on this podcast. Trust me, Jeff.
And Jeff, you can feel free to edit this out and I will not be offended. But for all our listeners out there, if you're familiar with one Greg Dalrymple, who works at the Trenton R9 School District and has done some coaching in his days, if you really want to make Greg's day and you see him passing, give him the horns up. Give him those horns up and it'll make him feel really good. We're all about making people feel good around here. And at least that's why I'm part of this show. I want to make people feel good. And so if you see Greg, horns up to Greg.
Hey, love you guys. Appreciate you. And we've had a fun year. And I'm going to say goodbye for the year from Show Me Sports Legacies.